vampire films are classic genre movies, and they're probably my favourite form of cinema. I think genre films are where films can be their most escapist and, most fantastical and most immersive. I think the vampire genre is something I've always really enjoyed, whether it's in movies, TV, or games. The lore all around it has always been something that interests me, so we thought with the new release of Sinners, we'd do a little breakdown of our top 3 favourite vampire films and TV shows.
What the fuck, man? I thought we were gonna do movies about twins. I was so ready to talk about my favorite 1988 American buddy comedy film, Twins, starring Danny DeVito and Arnold Schwarzenegger. Now you ruined it.
We thought we'd break down our sort of top 3 favourite vampire properties in TV and games with this new release, and maybe we should start off with maybe our honourable mentions that didn't make the top 3.
We're doing a ranking.
Or should we do that at the end?
I think it could be fun to start with the ones that didn't make the cut.
Yeah, okay. So we'll start with our honourable mentions. Tommy, do you want to kick us off? We'll see if we have any that coincide.
Yeah, so I have 3 weird ones. These are not necessarily movies that I love, but I felt like they were interesting to briefly chat about and definitely are not in my top 3 vampire properties of all time. The first one I wanted to talk about was Priest. Have you ever seen this film?
I haven't, but I am aware of it. I'm just going to get the poster up because I feel like it's
a bad movie. Yeah.
yeah. I feel like I remember always seeing the poster and thinking this looks like some low budget trash.
yeah, and it is, but it was fun in a way. It's a 2011.
I'm just looking at it now. Paul Bettany, Carl Urban, Christopher Plummer. It's
insane. The reason why I want to talk about it is it's kind of like it came out in 2011 and it was at the tail end of that era of mid-budget action movies, that post-Matrix, bad CGI, very edgy, very for a young male audience kind of movie, kind of like Equilibrium with Christian Bale. It's like Riddick in a way. We mentioned Van Helsing recently. I think that was a similar kind of vibe. The Underworld movies, the Resident Evil franchise. So, a lot of shit in this era of Hollywood. But in this horrible slop, there were some gems. And I'm not pretending Priest is this underrated gem of action by any means. I think it's based on a Korean comic book. And I believe the fans of the source material just hate this film because it changes so many things about the source material. But Paul Bettany is good as this vampire hunting priest. The movie is set in this alternate future where centuries-long war between humans and vampires has just devastated the planet. It's a wasteland with big cities walled off. It's a post-apocalypse, which is another element that we keep going back to in these reviews. The vampires in this world are creatures with incredible strength and speed, and they're horrible CGI monsters.
I'm just looking at a picture of them. It looks more like an alien than a vampire.
But so Paul Bettany is one of these elite warriors called the Priests because there's this totalitarian theocracy he's part of called the Church, and he goes around killing vampires. And Carl Urban plays this evil vampire guy with a very cool cowboy look. I think his name is Black Hat or something like that. And, it was like...
Well, he is wearing a black hat.
Yeah, there you go. He was like a former priest and vampire hunter, and he's like a satanic... Like, he's the first human vampire. Is having so much fun, this guy playing the character, and I had fun watching it. I haven't seen it in years, so this is not a recommendation. It's just like, this is an interesting relic from a bygone era and we should preserve it because they are not making movies like this anymore. So yeah,
I tell you what, just after what you've said and now looking through some images, I really want to watch this.
It's if you go into it with the right mindset, it's actually a decent time.
I imagine it's very silly. Yeah, it probably captures that. I'm sure it, like those films of that era, It's probably got a couple moments in it and a couple sequences in it which are really fun and make the kind of whole experience somewhat worthwhile. Yeah, and like Paul Bettany's always really good, and Carl Urban's always really good. So that's a recipe for a good time. Priest. So yeah, haven't seen Priest, but I'm gonna add that to my list. I think 15% on Rotten Tomatoes. Fuck them. They don't know what they're talking about.
Critics, am I right?
So yeah, one of my honourable mentions, which we have mentioned already, was From Dusk Till Dawn. I watched this when I was very young, probably too young, I think. I remember watching it with my dad, and I think it was just on TV, and he had already seen it before, but I went into it completely blind. Besides the fact from it being a really good vampire film, the first act or two is a really great Tarantino-style thriller.
Yeah, it's written by Tarantino, isn't it?
Yeah, and very much has those hallmarks. Like the opening sequence is so good. We have he's like a gas store owner, and he's chatting away to this guy that works. Ernest, this the sheriff of a town, and he's chatting away to a gas store clerk, and their dialogue is classic Tarantino. They're having really quippy, good, quick-paced dialogue between each other, very like realistic, and also cinematic in the way that Tarantino does. And we get the news that there's these two bank robbers who have been on the run, and they've got hostages, and they take shelter inside the gas store, and it all kicks off. Big shootout. We get introduced to our main characters, played by George Clooney and Quentin Tarantino himself. A weird role.
What a role, man.
especially when you're considering he's writing this too.
Yeah.
He wrote himself as the most heinous, evil, raping, murdering piece of shit. And it's like, hey, you know. Well,
he also wrote a scene where he drinks tequila from Salma Hayek's foot. So...
I know. So there's a lot to be said about his involvement with this project. Just imagine yourself being in the shoes of the people on that set that day. when he has to drink, basically put Salma Hayek's foot in his mouth. Oh, and all those people are like, oh, that's the boss, by the way.
Yeah.
He's kneeling down with the actress's foot in his mouth. Yeah, he's the boss.
He's the one who decides.
He makes the decisions around here, clearly.
I mean, he made a great decision for himself. I don't know.
And it's one of those things, obviously, you know, if you look deep into it, it is potentially a bit creepy and it's a bit weird.
Yeah, it is. It is weird and creepy.
But it's also a great scene. And it would have been fine if he had given that to anybody else. It's just because he's written it for himself is a bit bizarre. But it's all the great stuff. And his character is really good. This is probably Tarantino acts.
Only I, Quentin Tarantino, can provide the right heft to the role to bring this scene to the screen in a very believable way. So I will take charge here.
Exactly. And he has a bit of a history of this kind of thing, because I don't know whether you know, but in Inglourious Bastards,
the choking scene.
Yeah, he is the hands, and that's his cameo in Inglourious. He is the hands which choke the German actress's character. And, you know, again, that could be played by anybody, but, you know, they're in like a...
You know what would be fine? If I choked you.
Yeah. He's like, thinking, you know, who do we get to do this? So we'll get the stuntman, or, you know, we'll get anybody, production assistant, the grip or whatever. And he's like, no, I'm sorry, I'm going to do that. And everyone looks around and is like, you don't have to, Quentin. I'm sure you're going to be very busy. You got a lot to do. And it's like, no, I'm going to do that. And again, it's done really well. That scene in Inglourious is amazing. And I think he probably can take it a bit further than another actor playing that role would do. Maybe they wouldn't feel they could grip as tight on the choke or something, because like that choking scene seems like he is putting quite a bit of force on her, and so maybe he has that trust with his actors that he feels more comfortable that he can do that, and it will prove better results. But
probably.
Yeah. And I think this is his best acting work that he's done, playing in From Dusk Till Dawn. In some roles he's very jarring.
I mean, what are you talking about? What about Jimmy in Pulp Fiction. Don't Jimmy me now. Don't fucking Jimmy me.
See, Jimmy's quite good in Pulp Fiction. I think he's quite like a
very minor character, though. Yeah.
Yeah, very minor character, and he's cast appropriately. But like the Australian guy he plays in Django, that like totally took me out of the film.
Was he supposed to be Australian in the movie? I never even noticed that.
he has an Australian accent.
I did not.
Terrible.
I should rewatch it because I do not remember Quentin Tarantino being Australian in Django. But yeah, that sounds horrible.
And that's definitely the benchmark of one of his worst. But yeah, this is a really good role. He's super creepy in it. And it's a good dichotomy between his brother, his older brother is George Clooney. And we see...
Very good in this.
Yeah, George Clooney's great in this. And it's again, not a typical role for him to play. And I think he does it really well. So we see them take shelter in a motel and they encounter Harvey Keitel, who's playing a priest or a former priest because he's lost his faith, the classic character setup, and his Asian son and his white daughter. which I always thought was just, I don't know, maybe one of them's adopted, I'm not sure, or he had a second marriage. It's never addressed. It's not a problem. It's just I've always found it quite funny. They're Juliette Lewis, Harvey Keitel, and the son. They get taken hostage by the group as sort of safety whilst they're traveling to get across the Mexican border. That's where they happen upon this bar where they're having this meeting with someone who's going to give them all their new documents, and that's where the film turns on its head. It's like an hour into a film that's maybe 90 minutes or maybe a bit less, and it has this absolute switch. And if you don't know what's going to happen, it is one of the most shocking moments in a film I've ever experienced, when it's just such a switch up of genres. And both parts are done equally as well. The vampire section of the film is brilliant. We have all these crazy other characters who come into it, which are kind of Robert Rodriguez stalwarts like Danny Trejo and a few other recognizable actors, and all playing these very over-the-top, crazy characters that you'd get in more like a video game world. And I just love it. There's some great action moments.
Yeah, the action is really fun. I think I knew back in the day when I first watched it, I think I knew about the twist because, the movie had been out for a very long time at the time. But it still hit. Like, I almost forgot that it was supposed to be about vampires. It still worked really well as a whiplash moment.
Yeah. And all the makeup designs for all the vampires are cool. It's like an interesting look for vampires that's kind of unique to this film. They're a bit different looking than your average vampires.
Yeah, that's true.
They're a bit more monstrous in the face, and they're a bit more like large and built and strong. So yeah, it's quite a unique interpretation of the genre. Great film if you haven't seen it.
Recommend it. All right, my second honorable mention is a very recent film, 2023, I believe, Last Voyage of the Demeter. Have you ever heard of this film?
I've seen it.
Oh, you've seen it?
Yes.
Okay, so for the people who don't know, and I think we're definitely going to talk about Bram Stoker's Dracula later in the episode, but in Dracula by Bram Stoker, the book, and the movie too, there is a brief scene where Dracula himself, the vampire, travels on a boat to get to the town where the rest of the story happens. In the book is a very brief, either like it's a captain's log, is like one chapter or like a one small paragraph where the captain of the ship tells about this plague that is devastating the ship on which Dracula is traveling. When the ship arrives at shore, everyone is dead. And this movie is basically that chapter of the book. And it's actually an interesting story on how it came to be, because planning for the film began back in 1992 during the production of Bram Stoker's Dracula. And there was this spec script kind of going from desk to desk, but nothing came of it. And the film was in development hell for like 20 years. And they finally made it, and it's fun. It's not amazing, but I liked it. It got our boy David Dastmalchian in it as the ship's quartermaster.
Yes. So this script's been around for a very long time.
Yeah.
Do you know how much has it changed much from that old draft that was being bandied around?
What I read is that it was basically pitched as an alien-inspired film set aboard a ship.
Yeah,
so
totally get that.
That's basically what we got. I don't think it changed much.
So it didn't change at all. Yeah. It's a very simple film.
Yeah.
And
it's not as as cool as I wanted it to be. But it still was entertaining.
I think it had a lot of potential, and when I saw the trailer for this, I was quite excited because I'm very familiar with Bram Stoker's Dracula and familiar with the journey of the Demeter, and was like, oh yeah, that is a great moment that you could extend into a movie and just have basically a classic almost slasher or ghost story set on this isolated ship, and and Nosferatu, Dracula, is your antagonist in this. And yeah, great potential. I liked a lot of the cast. It's got the guy who plays Davos in Game of Thrones as the lead, Liam Cunningham, and he's really good. The main guy who was in Straight Outta Compton, can't remember his name, he was also good. The guy who plays the Doctor.
Oh yeah, I remember.
He's Dr. Dre in Straight Outta Compton. The kid's from Cobweb. Have you ever seen Cobweb?
No, I haven't seen Cobweb.
He's much better than that. But yeah, the kid was a little bit. I mean, classic kid acting. It's nothing too spectacular. But yeah, a lot of the side characters I quite liked on the ship. Like David Dasmalchian, I thought was good. I just remember, because I watched this with my dad and my brother, I think, and throughout the film, we were just getting really annoyed, like frustrated with some of the character decisions. It's classic. Things start going wrong with the ship little by little. You know, people are either getting sick or people start dying. But it's quite evident it all comes from, they discover it's coming from this box down in this crate they brought onto the ship's hull. And it's like, that's evident to them within like a third of the way through the story. And at no point do they decide to just go down and like burn the box or seal the box or wait by the box.
I mean, dude, the movie wouldn't happen if they did. So
exactly. And that's why they needed to change how they structured that bit, because it was a constant reminder. And they're like, how do we get this guy? We know where he sleeps and we know where he wakes up from, and he goes back into the box, and maybe we trap him. It's like, well, no, wait till it's daytime because he can't go outside, and then go and then just burn the fucking box.
Yeah, it feels like there's a very easy solution to what's happening, and they don't do it because the movie needs to happen. So yeah, I agree with you. And
they needed to play on the mystery of, they didn't know where he was for a long time, because it's, I think when things start going wrong, they check the ship's hull and someone breaks into the box and loads of like stuff comes out. Is it like loads of sand or something comes out of the box, and they realize there's a symbol on it, and they know this is the source of evil, and they shouldn't have done that till later on, because it's a constant reminder of, actually, this does seem easily solvable right now, but everything's going wrong. But there's some great moments. I remember when the boy gets infected and he gets eviscerated by like the sunlight. That was quite good. I remember that scene.
Yeah, and I wasn't expecting the kid to. I mean, everyone dies, and we know that from the start. But for some reason, I guess that's a spoiler. But yeah, there's some unexpected stuff that I felt like they were. I don't know, like it surprised me in a few deaths that I felt.
Yeah,
like.
You're so right. That was very because it feels a bit sanitized in some of its like violence, and kind of feels like one of those films where they don't want to push it too far either way, whether it's, you know, it's for all audiences or it's like an 18 and it's super gory. So I was like, there's no way this kid's gonna die, and he ends up like bursting into flames in like quite a brutal fashion, and was like, oh, I was not expecting the film to do that. But.
Yeah, that was a welcome change. We love it when kids burn in movies. And you can quote me on that.
Yeah, so I agree. It had a lot of potential. Probably didn't live up to it, but I enjoyed a lot of moments from the film. And it was still pretty decent.
Nice. What's next?
So my next one, which I'm not sure whether you've seen, is a film called Near Dark.
No, I haven't. Tell me about it. The name does sound familiar, but pitch it to me.
So, Catherine Bigelow directed one of her very early films. Obviously, she became famous for like Hurt Locker and Zero Dark 30 later in her career. And also, isn't she she's James Cameron's, she was married to James Cameron, right?
Yes, she was married to James Cameron for a long time.
And I think that's important to note here because there is some crossover. I think maybe
Bill Paxton, isn't it? Lance Henriksen.
But yeah, exactly. So a lot of James Cameron alumni in this film. And two of my favourites it's Bill Paxton and Lance Henriksen. Like, I love Lance Henriksen. He's such a good actor. And obviously both of them absolutely legendary. And yeah, it's a very gritty, realistic take on vampires, but also is presented in quite a beautifully and stylish way in terms of the way it's shot. Our main character, who's probably the weakest element of the film, he's kind of one of those protagonists that's classic, like, you're way less interesting than all these side characters around you. But he meets a girl played by Jenny Wright at a bar, and they get on really well, but it turns out she bites him on the neck and turns him into a vampire. And we go on this journey of discovery with Caleb, who's our main character, about, now you're subjected to this life of hiding away from society. You have to, live in the dark, and you start feasting on humans. And as May brings him into her group, which is like Bill Paxton and Lance Henriksen, and they're this group of vampires who some of them have been around for, hundreds of years. And
yeah, I think I've seen this like maybe on TV like a very long time ago, and not all of it.
I know Red Letter Media did a review, and that's how I heard about it. And once I heard the premise, I was like, yeah, this sounds great. So I got it straight away. And it's I think vampires tend to be played as like very glamorous.
Yeah, sexy.
In a lot of media, and sexy, whereas this is the total opposite. These are basically like homeless junkies is how they are portrayed, and this is an addiction they're dealing with, and it forces them to live life as like vagabonds. And this is not, it's a miserable existence for them. And there's one really interesting character in their group who was turned to a vampire as a child.
Oh yeah.
So they're stuck as a child forever, and you get this like interesting bit of dialogue with them just about how horrible their life is, trying to have a relationship with anybody when you're like 100-year-old 14-year-old teenager. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, and there's some great action sequences in this. There's a big. I'm not sure what James Cameron's involvement in the film, but he's definitely involved, because like the final big set piece involves like a massive semi truck, just like I think in like Terminator 2 there's like loads of semi truck action involved in it as well.
I don't see his name anywhere in production or anything, but being Catherine Bigelow's husband, I'm sure she was gonna be like, can I copy your homework, but not make it too obvious. So yeah. She's a great director. I'm not to take this away from her.
No, this is a fantastic movie. Like I really rated it. This was the one of my honorable mentions which really could have easily slipped into 3, but it's a bit morose, and it's a bit lacking in like lightheartedness and joy in moments. Like, it's very miserable throughout for the most part. So I think in that realm it doesn't reach the heights of like the other 3 I've got to mention. But highly recommend this one. And it's a bit of like an underrated gem. It's not a film that's very well known.
I'll check it out. All right, my next one is gonna be very brief because I want to get to the good stuff. But I wrote here Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter. Title says it all. Director of Wanted.
I haven't seen this.
It's a fun little movie. Abraham Lincoln, before he became president, he was hunting vampires. And it's just dumb fun.
Based off a comic, isn't it?
It's based on a comic, and yeah, there's not much that I can say. If that title doesn't grab you like it did me when I was 18 years old, then I have nothing to say to you. I was just interested from the very first teaser trailer. So it's a very dumb little film.
It is a very grabbing title. It's a film I have never seen, but I will always remember the title and the poster. And it's like, hey, it's great. It's marketing 101 right there.
Yeah, it's one of those when basically I'm guessing the pitching and the production went like, okay, this is the title, this is the idea behind it. Let's just craft the marketing around this, and kind of like Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. What was it?
Yeah,
it was a similar one. So yeah. Not much to say about this one, but I wanted to throw it in there.
Is it what would you give it out of 10? Just because, I've never watched it. I have always been intrigued to watch it, but
I mean, I cannot give a score to this movie, man, because I can't rate it. Like,
is it better? Is it better than Last Voyage of Demeter?
Probably around the same level of quality, I should say. Yeah, probably 6.5 for what they are.
Yeah. So still above average.
Yeah, and Priest is an 11. Of course.
Well, clearly, I mean, you had glowing things to say about Priest. So Priest must be a very high rating. Yeah, so my final honourable mention, I think, is one you already have in your list. And to be honest, now that I'm thinking about it, I probably would switch this with my number 3, but I can't change it now.
Well, that's a great way to transition us into the top 3, so top 6, I should say.
Yes, so now that I'm thinking about it, I probably would have switched these two around, but I am going to go with What We Do in the Shadows.
Yes.
It's been like this the whole time, Deacon, on dishes, and it still hasn't moved in 5 years.
You're a cool guy, but you're not pulling your weight in the flat.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that I'm cool.
No, that's not the point, though.
Yeah,
You're missing
I
the
know.
point.
Not a
I know.
flat meeting about how cool you are.
Another honourable mention. I think it doesn't, I think it maybe falters in its final act.
Whoa, dude. Let's start from the beginning.
Because I feel like the first hour of this film is unbelievably good.
Yeah.
Or like the first half an hour or so, like the setup and the introduction to the world and the characters is like 10 out of 10. When I first watched it, I was howling with laughter. Little bits like it's taking the aspects of the vampire genre that we all know and basically satirizing them in these hilarious ways. For example, we have Taika Waititi plays one of the vampires, and I think he directs and writes the story as well. He brings a girl back to their, 3 vampires sharing a flat together, and they're making a mockumentary about them all living together. Well, actually, there's a 4th vampire, the actual Nosferatu, who lives in their basement in a coffin. And
a Count Orlok parody that's better than Count Orlok himself.
Yeah, and Taika Waititi's like character, things like these kind of setups where he'll bring a girl back and he's about to suck her blood, but as he pierces her neck, he like hits an artery and her blood starts spraying everywhere and like making a mess of their whole house.
That was hysterical the first time I watched it.
Yeah, it was so good.
Yeah, it's one of those, I think one of the best mockumentary style horror comedies that we've got. It's just so funny. And yeah, I agree with you that the ending maybe is not as memorable as that first hour and a half, but
I think when they turn, there's the other character who's like a regular guy from New Zealand who they turn and he joins their group. I think that from that point it's not as strong as it was when it's just with the core trio, but still great stuff all throughout. I'm nitpicking here really because that like it's 10 out of 10 for the most part. Absolutely, it's just so good, so funny. There's so many great quotable moments from this film, like Jermaine Clement, who's from Flight of the Conchords. He's also plays one of the vampires.
He's so funny.
He gets. Or actually, no, it's the other guy, it's Deacon, who I can't remember the actor's name. He gets asked, why do vampires like drinking the blood of virgins? And his answer is like, well, if I was to eat a sandwich, I'd rather it not have been fucked already. It's like, and that's just so genius.
Yeah. And I love this movie also because it kind of like inspired us back in the day to write our own mockumentary style horror comedy where the devil has a flatmate and he has to work in Nando's, and I think that's one of the best things that I've ever had the pleasure of writing. So that was thanks to movies like What We Do in the Shadows that came to be. So that was really fun.
Yeah, definitely inspired a lot of ideas in us, and it was such a breath of like fresh air within the genre that it felt like like that momentum could have really kept going with more films and stories like this, really on point. And that group of guys from the sort of Flight of the Conchords fame are just very talented, a very unique sense of humor, and that New Zealand accent is just hilarious.
Yeah, for some reason, it just makes everything better. I don't know why. Hunt for the Wilder People would not be as funny as it is if it was set in any other country. That's probably why they didn't remake it in America, because it's just the accent that does it. So
yeah, great stuff. And the little gags they do, there's so many brilliant gags that, you know, rip on the great elements of the genre.
I mean, the Count Orlok guy, the most ancient of the housemates, I guess, that lives in the basement, and they have to feed him live chicken every once in a while because he needs to suck their blood, and it's like they're treating him like, oh, you know, we have to take care of this guy, you know, it's like the old man in the house.
Like a old senile man that's just like a slight annoyance.
Every time that guy was on screen, I couldn't hold it in, man. So good.
And things like, we see them going out on a night on the town in New Zealand, and they're trying to get into a club, and they can't go inside somewhere unless they're invited in. And so they're like, let me in. And he's like, well, just go on in then. And he's like, no, but you have to invite us.
There's a very similar scene in Sinners, by the way, because they play on this trope as well, as I said. Yeah. And it kept popping into my head. It was like, oh, is this like what we do in the shadows when they want to go clubbing and they can't go in because the bouncer is not allowing them to go.
One of the best horror comedies, like mockumentaries ever made, I think. And you know, I suppose there's few in that genre, but this is perfect. It's so good.
And I've never seen the TV show. Is it good? Have you seen that? Because
it's not as good as the film. Matt Berry is really good in it, and like Kaya Novak from Phone Jacker's in it as well, and Four Lions. So it's like it's got a very good cast. I just think it's trying to recapture that magic of the film, and it was just done better in the movie.
Yeah, I should check it out. But like, I felt like it's one of those things that it's better left alone. It's like one little movie that is perfect. They even wanted to make a sequel or kind of like a spin-off about the werewolves, but they didn't.
I'm glad they didn't. Yeah, it doesn't need any of that. It was great, and like I said, I think it will go down as in history as one of the greatest of that genre.
Absolutely.
Wow. What did he then, boy? Hey, that was... Don't swear. What are we? Werewolves, not werewolves.
When you're a vampire, you become very sexy.
Now how glowingly I've spoken about that. My top 3 third choice seems retarded. But...
Well, I am really curious to hear them, even though I probably know a couple of those.
So yeah, go on. Do you want to start us off with your number 3?
Well, my number 3 was What We Do in the Shadows. So I could go to my number 2, or we should probably go with your number 3 first.
Yeah, okay. Well, so yeah, your top 3, What We Do in the Shadows as well. Absolutely fair choice. It could have easily been my number 3 as well. Now thinking about it, it probably is better than my third choice, which is Blade 3.
Oh, come on, man.
Oh no, sorry, not Blade 3. That would have been a terrible choice. Blade 2.
Oh, that's a little better.
But we need a leader.
Let me get this right. You want me to hunt them for you? Ooh, so exciting.
I think it has a lot of nostalgia value for me, this film. Saw it when I was very young. Thought it was like the coolest film ever made when it came out.
I mean, it kinda is.
Yeah, I think it's the best of the Blade series for sure. People really revere the first one. The first one is good, but I think the second one smashes it out of the water for sure. It takes everything good about the first one and brings it up.
It does the same thing that Hellboy 2 does for Hellboy 1, in my opinion.
Interesting.
Because Guillermo del Toro directed both of those movies, where in this case he came into the second one, and I think it made everything a lot more interesting and fun.
Yeah, I see Hellboy, like 1 and 2, I think they're a lot closer in quality. You know, I think they're both great films. Whereas like Blade 1, like if you watch it again, like all the visual effects are really bad. And there's a scene at the end where like Blade kills all the final vampires vampires, and they turn into like little CGI like skeleton
Yeah.
vampire things and fly out their mouths, and it's literally the worst looking thing ever.
But wait, is there any blood rave sequence in the second one?
That's true. That was very good in the first one. I love that scene. And yeah, Blade 1 has some great stuff in it, but Blade 2 as an overall piece, I think is really well done. We get Norman Reedus added to the alumni of characters, which is good. I quite liked his character. He's like the tech assistant kind of classic character. You get an introduction of a new type of vampire, which was done really well with all the practical effects, played by Luke Goss, who actually is he plays the Dark Elf in Hellboy 2 as well.
Oh yeah, yes, he's great.
And I think he's got a bit of a history of playing movie monster type characters, and he's very good at it. He plays a Nomak in Blade 2, and it's these evolutioned form of vampires where they have like almost predator type mouths that open up. They don't just feast on humans, but they also feed on vampires too. So it's a cool setup because these task force of vampires, which have been tasked to kill Blade, now approach Blade, and they're like, actually, we face a threat that's even bigger than you. We need to kill the Reapers, which are these new form of vampires. And so you have this elite force of like fighters. Ron Perlman's in it, and you got Donnie Yen, and they're all like, this is the katana guy, and he's going to be quiet. He's not going to say a word, but he's going to be badass with the katana. And then you've got a guy called Priest, and they've all got code names and cool character designs. And, you know, some of them are just cannon fodder for the Reapers in these good action sequences. Yeah, like, I think the dynamic between Ron Perlman and Wesley Snipes as Blade, because they hate each other, is really good throughout the story. He has to take orders from Blade because he's leading the operation, but they all hate him. Yeah, it's a great film, this one.
Yeah.
I've always really enjoyed it.
And I wanted to briefly shout out David S. Goyer.
Yes.
Who's the writer for all of 3 Blade movies. Goyer is one of those guys that got a lot of shit, especially recently. Well, the last few years, he wrote, for example, the great Batman v Superman, which is a very bad movie with very bad writing. But it did write and did work on a bunch of great films, especially comic book films that we all love, like the Blade movies. He worked on
Batman Begins.
He worked on The Dark Knight. You know, he did a bunch of good stuff. And these Blade movies, I think, you know, he is the creative mind behind a lot of them because he wrote all 3 of them. So, you know, shout out to Goyer. He did some good stuff too. And then he did Terminator Dark Fate.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if you go through Goyer's like filmography, he has done some awful stuff with some great things too. I mean, he did the remake of Hellraiser in 2022 apparently, and that was, I don't know whether you watched that, but it was one of the worst.
I haven't seen it yet.
God, it was so bad. I had to just turn it off after like 20 minutes. It was awful.
Yeah, it didn't look that good.
No. And yeah, a proper mixed bag, and it's kind of a shame they weren't able to keep Del Toro on for the third one, because I think he added something, especially in the visuals with the practical effects and the different types of monsters to this, that was just great. And I think the third one is by far the worst of the series. It's just a shame they couldn't have kept some of those people involved.
Agreed. He also did Dark City, Goyer. Sorry, just going through his filmography.
Yeah, it's a good film.
Great story. Okay.
Not know who you are messing with!
Blade 2.
Yeah, so we'll go on to what was your number 2 pick, Tommy?
Well, we were talking about the Count Orlok parody in What We Do in the Shadows, and now we get the real thing with Nosferatu.
Come to me. Come to me. Hear my call. Come to me.
The American Gothic horror film recently released in cinemas by Robert Eggers, director of The Witch, The Lighthouse, and The Northman, which leads me to the question, why didn't he call it The Nosferatu? Because I hate the inconsistency here. You know, all the movies starts with the, so...
The Nosferatu just doesn't have the same ring to it, unfortunately.
Anyway, the film is actually a remake of the film Nosferatu from 1922.
There's been 3, hasn't there?
Yeah, there's been another one.
Like a 6th There was like a 60s one as well, isn't there?
Yeah, but Nosferatu itself, the original German movie, was itself inspired by Dracula by Bram Stoker.
Well, it's a complete rip-off. It's basically just to use the story and change the names. Yeah.
They didn't want to pay the rights for the Dracula IP at the time, so they were like, oh, we just make the same story, we change the names, and that's fine. And Count Orlok and Nosferatu became an icon of pop culture in their own right compared to Dracula. And I went to see the movie in the cinema. I'm a big fan of Eggers. I love all of his movies. They're all so different, but so interesting, from cinematography, just like the vibe of them. I just like them all. And Nosferatu, I don't know, I would have to rewatch it, but I think it's probably my favorite that he did, even though The Northman is quite close.
Really? Okay. Interesting.
It's just fun. I mean, I love, it feels like it's a passion project. You know, it's a love letter to old school horror. Robert Eggers, I think he adapted Nosferatu into a play when he was in high school. So this is something that he wanted to do for the longest time.
Yeah.
And I feel like it shows.
Yeah.
You know, it's a super simple story, which I found surprisingly refreshing for some reason. Like, I was expecting him to put a twist on the formula, but he just does the old school storyline with some inspired directing and cinematography. But it's the vibe, you know, it's the acting. It's one of those movies that I feel like it's more than the sum of its parts, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It just lingers in your head. It has this incredible sense of style, you know, all these sequences with the shadow on the town of the hand.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, it mimics the look of the old film, but has this modern flair. And I just love, this is gonna sound weird, but I just love how Count Orlok, Nosferatu himself, is just a creepy corpse.
Yeah.
It's like, it's just a monster in the most straightforward way, with bugs and larvas coming out of him. Well, probably, I'm guessing I'm spoiling what the next few ones will be, but like Gary Oldman's rendition of Dracula is horrible, and he does some pretty heinous stuff in the movie, but he also comes across as sympathetic.
Yeah, and he's like, he's not gross necessarily. He's still like quite
Yeah,
grand
he's sexy
and opulent, even when he's like in his like monstrous form. But this, this is like a disgusting depiction of what a real life walking corpse, which what Dracula is, would be like.
It's just a horny corpse, and that's fine. And I love it. Lily Rose Depp, amazing in the movie. Very difficult performance to pull off. She has to make so many weird movements and like faces, and it's just, I don't know, it was such a fun experience watching this movie, man.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it too. I thought, same as you, love Eggers' filmography. I think what you said about Nosferatu can be said about all his films, in terms of how it all feels like a passion project and something that he's been working on for ages, and a story that he really wants to tell. The Witch had that, The Lighthouse had that, and The Northman has that too. That just feeling of authenticity with somebody who really knows what they're talking about, because, you know, these are all somewhat period pieces to a degree.
True. Very different from each other, but...
Yeah, very different from each other, but have these unique sense of language in each one, and unique sense of like characterization. But I thought this is probably my least favorite Eggers film.
Okay, interesting.
And that's not to say I didn't enjoy it, because I think like The Witch and The Lighthouse are like perfect movies to me. I think they're both like 10 out of 10. The Northman was a bit more, and the Nosferatu is the same as The Northman. It's a bit more of Eggers becoming a bit more formulaic or traditional.
Accessible, I guess.
Yeah. And it's not necessarily a bad thing or a fault. I'm just, it's just they're more big cinema movies that are going to appeal to a wider audience, whereas The Witch and The Lighthouse are a bit more unconventional art house cinema, I feel like.
Yeah.
I think sometimes, like in Nosferatu, I was waiting for some real shocking moments, or moments of something that was really out there, which maybe didn't happen enough for me. But I thought the film was its strongest in the first hour or so, when we have Nicholas Hoult. He sets off on the journey to go to Count Orlok's castle, and his journey there, the first introduction to Count Orlok.
Oh my god.
And their meeting in the dinner table, was insane. Like the tension super high, and
the voice
was great.
Man.
The Bill Skarsgård's performance it's going to go underappreciated because he's under all that makeup, and I thought the same thing when he portrayed Pennywise. Those It films aren't amazing, but his performance is unbelievable, and it's really I think it's so hard to become almost inhuman with the performance, and he does that with Orlok,
and he keeps doing it.
Yeah,
maybe he's not human.
he's got such an unnatural way of being sometimes, and it's so perfect for these kind of roles that he does. And I thought the film works best when we're seeing him only in pieces, when he's hidden by shadow, or like in the beginning. I don't think his monologues worked as well towards the end of the film, where we see him in Lily Rose Depp's room and he's fully in light. You lose a lot of that horror element.
Yeah, true.
It becomes a bit of a different, more like a fantastical film. But yeah, there's some great sequences in this. I really liked the character who sort of summons the demon. Or he like...
Oh yeah, the guy who sends Nicholas Hoult on his way. Yeah.
Yeah, he's like this. He runs like the estate agent or whatever it is. And he sends Nicholas Hoult on his way, and then you see him go down to like this basement, and he performs some satanic ritual, and it's like, oh, okay, this is an interesting element. And then he comes back into the story later, and he's fully lost his mind, and he's like in this cell. And the doctor, played by Ralph Ineson, I thought was also really good in this role, and he sort of leads the investigation with Nicholas Hoult, Lily Rose Depp, and what's his name?
Aaron Taylor Johnson.
And Aaron Taylor Johnson was so funny in this film. Do you not think? And I think, I mean, it's intentional. I think the comedy with his character, but he's just stuck in this situation because Lily Rose Depp is constantly getting possessed by Nosferatu.
He's like, what are you doing, man?
She's having these insane sexual dreams.
There's children in the house.
yeah, and he's like, God damn it, woman, will you stop all that racket? And he was just so funny with how cavalier he is about everything. And then he, obviously takes a nice turn when the situation becomes too dire for him to ignore anymore.
It was a strange role for him. I wasn't necessarily expecting him in this gentleman role. What I found funny was that when I watched this movie, I had recently watched the great cinematic masterpiece, Kraven the Hunter, where Aaron Taylor Johnson plays the titular character. So I kept seeing him with his silly vest jumping around London. I kept thinking about bad movie, and that's probably why I love this movie so much, because it's a good movie. So I was like, oh wait, movies are good again.
Yeah, he was great in this. I like the dynamic he had with the other characters. I did think, and I watched this at the cinema with my girlfriend, and we both like simultaneously looked at each other. There's like some of these monologues that Lily Rose Depp has. I think she's really good at doing the extreme moments in this film.
Yeah.
All the body contorting and the possession sequences and like the, her mouth gurning and things like that were unbelievable.
The physical stuff is
she's really on point. But then there's a couple times when she looks over out the window and she's talking to her sister and she's like, the winds of winter have fallen upon thy shoulders and now my sorrow begins. And it's like very much like that, and it's over dramatized. It feels like she's reading off a theatrical script.
Yeah, it's like it feels like a book, even when other people are speaking.
I know, but that kind of stuff is more fitting for like Bram Stoker's Dracula, whereas this felt like a gritty, realistic interpretation of life back then.
I mean, realistic is not the right word for I would use to describe this movie, but
in the way they portray everything other than the supernatural elements, it is trying to get this like authenticness about life of those times, in which Robert Eggers is very
the weird village underneath the castle with the gypsies, I guess. That's true.
Like they've and Robert Eggers is all about that authenticity, and it felt like
and all the Germans speaking perfect English. That also is very realistic.
They'd be like Fraulein, and she'd be like, yeah. But no, I it didn't. I still think it was really good.
And Willem Dafoe is having so much fun, man.
Yeah, Willem Dafoe was really good. Maybe a little bit over the top at points.
Oh, I mean, we are gonna discuss over the top in a minute, I think, and that's not, Willem Dafoe has nothing on Anthony Hopkins. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, really, really good. I really rated it, and I'm glad it was quite successful at the cinema. So it looks like Egger's next project or next 2-3 projects have already been greenlit, and
nice.
It sounds like he's doing a werewolf movie next, which is going to be fucking awesome. I can imagine.
Love to see it.
The vampire. Nosferatu.
All right. What's next?
So, yeah, my number 2 is, we've mentioned it a few times already, Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Oh, no, really?
There's some moments in this film which are 10 out of 10, and especially in terms of like the uniqueness of the way the film's made and certain things about the way it's constructed.
Oh, it's a filmmaker's dream, this movie.
Yeah,
it's just gorgeous from a production standpoint.
Yeah, and it was a film that I'd watched ages ago when I was quite young and thought it was just a decent vampire film and didn't appreciate it for all the extra technical kind of elements and other things that were going on. And it was only upon probably watching it again in the last few years that I've come to really appreciate how good it is.
Same.
And obviously, great cast. Yeah, you got Gary Oldman. Doesn't disappoint as the titular character here. This is where the film kind of has some downfall here with our other 2 leading actors, with Winona Ryder and Keanu Reeves. Who,
oh man!
Unfortunately, and like we just mentioned, Keanu Reeves plays the Nicholas Hoult role, and Winona Ryder is playing the Lily Rose Depp role in this story.
Yeah.
And oh my god,
wildly different takes. I should say
wildly different takes. If you compare scene by scene Nicholas Holt's performance to Keanu Reeves, you'd be like, oh, one.
And I love Keanu Reeves.
And, don't get me wrong, I love Keanu Reeves, but you'd be like, oh, one's an actor and one's like an AI generated bot, right?
What is Johnny Silverhand doing in this Dracula movie with his weird gray hair? It's upsetting. I just don't understand the choice.
He's just miscast in this role. Somebody like Keanu Reeves is good at playing an elf or a vampire because he's quite monotone and like one note in his performance, and I think those kind of characters are good for those roles. Here there are some scenes when Gary Oldman is acting his goddamn tits off in front of Keanu Reeves, and he'll be like, oh, what's that there on the ceiling? And looks up, and you're like, Gary's just poured his heart and soul into that, and you've just ruined that scene. And it's so funny, the drastic difference in quality from like scene to scene with him and Winona Ryder and Gary Oldman and Anthony Hopkins. It's
having the best time of his life.
Yeah, you have these 2 absolute legends who are just acting these guys under the table, and I love the opening sequence to this film. It's so good. Yeah. We get a sort of history of, because Dracula is based off a true historical figure for Vlad the Impaler, and they take that in this version of Dracula here, and that's Gary Oldman's character, and he's fighting a war. We see this epic shot which is done with like puppetry and silhouettes, and we see this massive battle sequence, and there is just so much artistry going on in this opening sequence. And then we see him renounce God, and he stabs the crucifix and blood starts pouring out, and this is his transformation. It's just, there's so much beautiful aspects to this film, and you can tell when we watch something. We did a review on The Electric State, and 320 million spent on that, and you can't necessarily see where that money's going. Here you're watching every penny like being spent on screen with some of these beautiful set designs, and
it's literally on screen because almost every effect was achieved on camera.
Yeah,
we have model work, as you said, forced perspective, you have rear projections, so many smoke machines, and everything was achieved in camera, there's this incredible scene. Like it's a 2-second scene in a montage where there's like this train traveling through the countryside, and it's just opposed to the diary Keanu Reeves' character is writing.
Yeah, and he's on the journey to Dracula's house.
They achieved this with like a huge book, and behind the book they put a model train and a rear projection of the countryside and the sky. This is like a 2-second scene, and it's all in camera. There's no visual effect. Well, there is visual effects, but no like special like CGI effects, of course.
And that's why it still holds up. You know, the film still looks incredible today when you watch it back, especially
it's
those
timeless.
sequences. It will forever be timeless, and I think it's the best interpretation of that story we've had so far. I love that film.
Costumes, makeup. Shout out to Aiko Ishioka, who's the costume designer for the movie.
Yeah, we have like this very almost like feudal Japan look going on with Gary Oldman's Dracula.
The weird armor that he wears at some point, and then the cool tube hat and the small glasses, and like the look of it. It's just so unique. It's really well done.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, good to shout out the costume designer, because that is something which stays with you from this film for sure. And there's a funny element now that you bring that up. I don't know whether you've ever seen the clip of it's behind the scenes, and Francis Ford Coppola is directing Gary Oldman, and he's trying to walk down the stairs. Have you ever seen this?
I think I did. Yeah,
it's so funny. So Gary Oldman's wearing that big dress that he wears, and he's trying to walk down these big stairs, and he just can't do it because he's tripping over himself all the time. And Coppola is just fuming with him, and he's just at the bottom, and he keeps radioing up. It's just like, God damn it, Gary, just walk down the stairs, sort of thing. And Gary Oldman storms off, and he starts huffing and puffing, and he's getting all annoyed. But obviously, he's wearing a massive dress, and he's got this vampire Dracula makeup on, and this big hair, and him just like effing and blinding whilst he's dressed up in this ridiculous costume. Oh, it's absolute film gold.
Yeah, they should have kept that in the movie.
Yeah, and obviously legendary director as well, Francis Ford Coppola.
Yeah, that was the time when Francis Ford Coppola was making classic after classic after classic.
Yeah.
Not so much these days, but
no.
What can you do? Yeah, great movie, horny movie. By the way, bring back horny movies, because Sinners is also kind of horny, but not as horny as it could have been. So,
would you say, is Bram Stoker's Dracula more horny than Nosferatu? Nosferatu is pretty damn horny.
I mean, it is pretty horny, but the way the horniness is depicted is more unsettling and weird and
true,
and strange. While in Bram Stoker's Dracula is so sexy, like everyone is they just want to bone all the time.
They have that ceiling orgy, which is a really good scene.
Yeah, a very good ceiling. Sorry about that, but yeah. So something to learn about this movie. That sex, if used properly and in the right context, it can enhance the experience of a film. And in this case, with sexy vampires and curses and stuff, it makes sense.
Well, there is no better genre to explore that, because vampirism has always had a sexual undertone to it.
True.
And it's a big part of
kissing the neck.
Yeah, it's always been a big part of the vampire genre. So I think when it's completely ignored is always a missed opportunity. Or you do something different and original and interesting with it, because that sexual undertone has always been an interesting facet of vampires.
True.
And your number one pick here.
So my number one pick, I am cheating. I mentioned this to you earlier, but my number one pick is Midnight Mass, which is not a movie. It's a mini-series.
See, if you hadn't have cheated, like the scumbag you are, Tommy, I would have probably put Midnight Mass in my top 3 as well, or at least my honorable mentions, because it's so damn good.
We tend to dislike mysteries. We feel uncomfortable not knowing. The more that we know, the less we bend, the more brittle we become, the easier to break
for anyone who hasn't seen it, Midnight Mass is this gothic supernatural horror miniseries, which was created and directed by the one and only Mike Flanagan, who was the absolute GOAT. And by the way, we should do a retrospective on him because he has a movie coming out. And to me, this is almost perfect. I love it even a smidge more than The Haunting of Hill House. And I love that show too. So, very briefly, the story. A young man returns to his childhood home of Crockett Island, a fading town of very few people living humble lives in this isolated community.
Great setting.
Yeah, it's an amazing setting. You get it right away. And he has just gotten out of prison where he served, I think, 4 or 5 years because he killed a woman in a drunk driving incident. And he arrives at the same time on the island as a mysterious, charismatic young priest who begins to kind of like revitalize the town's community with rousing speeches and reignites everyone's faith in God. And there's some very mysterious and supernatural stuff happening in this small town. And this supernatural stuff is connected to the arrival of the priest. So yeah, right out of the gate, Hamish Linklater as Father Paul.
Oh, he's amazing in it.
Gives one of those one-of-a-kind performances that I'm like, I am not even religious, and I could listen to that guy reciting the Bible for hours. He is so good. And everyone is. I think Flanagan clearly is great with actors because everyone shines in his productions. And yeah, it's just an amazing journey, this show.
Yeah, it was, I think the first time I watched it, I wasn't as hooked by it. I was more interested in the mysteries and the kind of that element of the revealing of the supernatural elements of the show. And I there was some really, really good characters into it, but I don't think I really latched on to Riley. Like, I wasn't loving his performance the first time I watched it. And he's obviously our sort of main sort of surrogate character that we enter this world through. But then I rewatched it again within the last year and completely changed my mind on that. I thought I was invested in all the characters. I think then when you have a bit more of expectation of where the story's going, you're not so much focused on the mystery box elements.
Yeah.
You can just sit there and enjoy the dialogue and the characterization. Yeah, there's just so many great sequences of just characters sitting down and having conversations, which are so well done.
So many characters sitting down and having very long conversation that I love. Don't get me wrong. There's 2 monologues back to back in this show that are the centerpiece of the whole thing. And they can get a bit much.
Yeah.
And you need to like that kind of stuff. And I love it. And I think it's so well written, but it kind of goes out of the realism of an exchange between 2 characters. And it becomes very theatrical, very, I want to tell you my thesis now and you're going to sit down and listen to me.
Yeah, we have a big climactic moment where Riley is explaining his belief of what happens after you die. What Erin is in it? Yeah, Erin.
Yeah. Who's the actor is actually Mike Flanagan's wife too.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah, she was really good. I've not seen her in much else either.
She's in almost every movie and TV show from Flanagan too.
Yeah, I thought it's really well written, really interesting dialogue, but it gets to a point when it's like, yeah, this is, I'm very, very much watching a film, and I have been taken out of the reality of the situation to a degree, but still amazing stuff. There is a sequence in maybe the first or second episode where loads of cats wash up onto the shore of the island.
Yeah, I think it's the ending of episode 1.
Yes, and we learn that there's another little sort of marshland just off the island where all these stray cats have sort of housed, and they're all living there. And it seems fairly innocent to a degree that they've all managed to wash up dead on the beach. But then, as you look at the bodies, you see there's like bite marks in them, and still we're not necessarily having they don't tell you too much. Like, I didn't know where the story was going.
Yeah, and putting this show in this listicle is already kind of a spoiler because we are already saying the quiet part out loud. We are saying that there is vampires involved. But the funny thing is that the show doesn't call them vampires. They are not referred to as vampires. So we know they're vampires because of what they are in the story. But it's interesting that in the world of the show, vampires are not a thing. There's no character like in a Marvel style dialogue that says, oh, we're dealing with vampires now. No, they are dealing with this creature.
Yeah. And I think rightfully so. You get that a lot in the zombie genre as well. Like, people don't want to say the word zombie. They'll say something else because it comes with sometimes like silly connotations, like the word vampire and the word zombie. So I think it's good that they don't. But yeah, like I said, this opening, this scene in the first episode, we meet the town sheriff, who's a really great character in it too. He's like fairly new to the town, and he's chatting to the mayor, and the camera is just rotating around them, and he's like telling about, you know, what their theories are for what could have happened. And it's one of those scenes where it's such great, we're not being told who these characters are, we get it in little pieces. You know, the mayor's a bit of a hopeless optimist, and you know, he's a bit naive, and just because he's coming up with all these kind of weird silly theories for what he thinks, and we get the sense that the detective is he's pessimistic and a bit more skeptical and looks into things and is a bit more hardened around the edges. And it's all done just through normal conversations between the characters most of the time.
Flanagan is so damn good at this, providing information about the characters in very natural sounding conversations, and then he will switch to a more theatrical tone when he needs to, because he wants to bring that energy to a specific scene, like the monologues that we talked about.
Yeah.
And Father Paul is a perfect example of this. He will have these rousing speeches about God and about forgiveness and about hope, but then he can have a very believable, natural conversation with someone else. And yeah, it's just a one-of-a-kind performance from him.
The only thing that you could see coming was, which I love where this story ends. You know, we have this old lady in the town who's going through dementia, and she's senile, and she's the mother of the town's doctor.
And she's obviously a very young woman in old woman makeup.
Yeah, the old woman makeup looks quite bad, and it's like, why have they done this? And at the beginning you're thinking, before you know the supernatural elements, you're thinking, oh, well, you know, they just really wanted this actress to play this role, so they decided to do her in old age makeup rather than
there's going to be a flashback or something like that.
Yeah. You just like, you know, something's coming. And so constantly throughout the film, I was like, well, there's going to be some big reveal with this lady, because there is a reason she looks so ridiculous. And then you get the elements of people in the town start getting not as sick and de-aged to a degree. And like, I thought the reveal of his motivations,
that was so good.
Oh, it was so well done. So well done.
Another character that I wanted to briefly talk about is Samantha Sloan as Bev Keane.
Yeah, she a great villain. A classic Stephen King type villain as well.
Yeah, zealous, overbearing member of the church. The priest helper, I guess you can say, and she's one of the first to kind of like realize what's happening, and of course she reinterprets what's going on through her very religious lens. It's just such an interesting examination of faith and how faith is different for different people. Kate Siegel's character, she's pregnant, she has a very specific kind of faith. Riley has done something heinous. He doesn't want to be alive with that grief and that guilt of having killed a person in a drunk driving crash, so he doesn't believe in God anymore. And then you have this zealous woman who thinks she's better than anyone because she believes in God more than anyone else. And then you have Rahul Kohli character, the one you mentioned, the sheriff, who's Muslim, so, you know, of course, it's a very small community of Catholic, and he's a Muslim who's seen with very suspicious eyes by some people, and his relationship to faith and his son's relationship to faith. I don't know. I feel like it's such a rich setting and theme that he's exploring with this story about vampires, and it's so refreshing and so well done.
Yeah, definitely. And that is the crux, is the characters, their relationships with each other, the conversations they have. But the spectacle elements of it are also amazing. You know, when Paul is finally, he goes to confession. I can't remember who he's talking to, but he is telling, this is where we get the back story of his journey, and it's just such a unique, like, he goes on a pilgrimage to Israel, and you know, he gets lost because he's an old senile man, and he happens upon this cave, and you just don't expect this to be in it at all.
The first time you are not expecting any of it, and it's so cool
I was
when
so
you actually
shocked.
Realize what's going on.
And I was like, oh my god, because you see, the only thing you get is we see this massive crate that he's brought back with him. and we see it a few times, and we've also had hints that something big is flying around the town. That's all we've seen so far, and so we get the idea that there's something supernatural, a monster of sort, and it's like, oh, he found it on this religious journey in Israel, in a cave, and he happened upon basically a demon or an angel or a vampire. It's not quite confirmed what it is.
They call it an angel, of course, because of the religious undertone of the whole story. And they perceive him as an angel, because he has wings and he's very scary. And in the Bible, angels are described as being very scary beings.
Yeah.
So, Father Paul uses this to convince the community that this is an angel, that they should be afraid. But this doesn't mean that the angel cannot help them.
Yeah, and it offers them eternal life with obviously its terms and conditions, but yeah, so it is offering them this salvation, and they have this kind of euphoric moment when they transition to being vampiric.
Dude, that scene in the church.
Oh my god. There might not be that, that's probably one of the coolest shots in anything, when the angel demon has the robes on and he's walking down the church and everybody's like, what the fuck is that? And you just think, in something like this, with the way that the tone was, and because it's so character heavy, I was like, oh, we're not really going to see it, or it's going to be a bit disappointing, or we're only going to see it in flashes or something, and it's not going to become a massive element of the story. And then it's full blown this creature terrorizing the town once that scene happens, and it's just so good. It just takes so many twists and turns you don't expect it to.
Yeah. It's so unexpected the first time you watch it, and that's what makes it an entertaining watch, because you're kind of as you said, it's a mystery box show. You don't know what's going on, and you are putting the pieces together, and finally when it hits you what it is about, it becomes very entertaining, very violent, and then when you watch it on a second time and you know where it's headed, you enjoy it even more because the characters are so rich and the themes are explored so well. Yeah, the dialogue is just great. These characters interaction, man, I am in awe at the ability of Flanagan of just telling you so much about a character with so little, and using dialogue in a very interesting way.
No therapy scenes here.
yeah, even though there should be one, because people are going through stuff.
It would make more sense here. But yeah, we get it. We get that same level of exploration of exploring a character's psyche, but with characters having conversations with their father or their sister or their town sheriff, something more relevant to the fucking story at least. And as I'm thinking about it, even Riley's parents. They're not massive characters in it, but I think even their journey's so great. There's a really great moment between him and his dad where he basically is he's trying to connect with him again since he's come back, and they've never seen eye to eye since he accidentally killed someone in a drink driving accident, and they just have this moment where he comes and sits down on his bed and they have a bit of a heart to heart. He does such a good job at playing that. He's a stern, stoic man, and he wants to break through and have a connection with his son, but he just doesn't know how to. And they have a line of dialogue where it's sometimes we're talking a different language, me and you, son, and he kind of is characterized as a bit of an arsehole in maybe the earlier episodes, but then you really warm to him. You can see things from his perspective, and just the parents have such a nice when they start to just feel a bit better because they've been infected with the vampire's blood.
I love how they refuse to go along with it.
Yeah, at the end that was really beautiful.
And Henry Thomas, man, he's one of Flanagan's closest collaborator. I think he's in every movie and show he made.
Is that the dad?
He's the dad, and he's also Elliot from E.T., the extraterrestrial.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, he's the guy. He is so good in everything is in with Flanagan. He even plays, very briefly, I don't know if you've seen Dr. Sleep.
I have, but I can't really remember it too well. But
he plays Jack Nicholson in that one scene that they
yes.
do in the
hotel bar.
In the hotel bar, yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, he was a very good actor, I think, and he plays very interesting characters specifically in Flanagan stuff.
Yeah.
Another little thing that I wanted to add to the conversation is Kate Siegel, I mentioned before, Flanagan's wife, and she plays Erin in the show. She is the protagonist of the film Hush.
I know the film is. I've not seen it, but I know it.
The film is also by Flanagan.
Oh, okay.
And nice little Easter egg. I mean, the movie's not amazing. It's about this deaf writer who lives in this very secluded cabin in the woods, and there's this guy who wants to kill her by getting into the house, and she needs to keep him out of the house.
It sounded like such a basic premise. I don't think it ever really interested me to watch it.
I think I caught it on Netflix, and it was fine. As usual, Flanagan, his movies are at least interesting, but it's not his best stuff. But Madison, Kate Siegel's character in the movie, is the author of a book called Midnight Mass. So it was like a little Easter egg before he even made Midnight Mass, because this is another passion project for him that he wanted to make for a very long time. So he put that title in this previous movie of his.
Oh, nice.
With a character that is gonna star in the show later. So that was a little Easter egg for you boys and girls listening.
Well, yeah, again, it's good because it seems like he's got some sort of deal with Netflix, Flanagan, and he's got a lot of stuff in production at the moment because he's very talented, and I would love to see more stuff like this. This is one of the best things that Netflix has produced, in my opinion.
Yeah, totally. His stuff on Netflix is some of the best stuff that Netflix has, period. But I think his relationship to Netflix is done. The last thing he did was The Fall of the House of Usher. And then I think now he's making a movie. Well, he made a movie that is coming out this year called The Life of Chuck. But I think he signed on to do stuff with Prime. I am not entirely sure, but I'm pretty sure that his relationship to Netflix is not gonna continue in the future. So that's a shame. But...
Oh, right. Well, I know he's working on something which I remember hearing the premise. It sounded really good.
Yeah, it's a new movie with Tom Hiddleston.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that's it. And I also saw Gerald's Game not that long ago. That was proper surprising how good that was, actually.
And Carla Gugino is so good in it.
Oh, so good. Such a simple movie, but there's also some real horrific, scary sequences in it. And it was the first film I've watched in a long time that had actually creeped me out.
Well, the scene with the hand is...
Oh god!
No spoilers, but
yeah, and the guy from Twin Peaks they get in it as well.
Oh yeah, the weird looking guy.
Yeah, Mike Flanagan, super talented. I was a big fan of Midnight Mass. Like I said, would have put it in my top 3 had I realised you were going to cheat on this list, Tommy.
That's fair.
Who are you? You know who I am.
I haven't seen that many vampire things in my life. And, I could have talked about maybe Only Lovers Left Alive or other, but I felt like these were more fun to discuss with you. So
yeah.
Maybe we'll do a follow-up to talk about stuff that we've missed. But for now, these are the picks.
Well, I still need to do number 1.
Oh, yeah, sorry. That's true. I'm sorry. Go ahead with your number 1 then.
Yeah, so I'll say, yes, it still wouldn't have knocked, even if I'd put Midnight Mass in my list, it wouldn't have knocked this one off the top. Whenever I think of my favourite vampire film, this one wins hands down every time. It's up there as one of my favourite films in general of all time. I've seen it maybe 4 or 5 times, called Let the Right One In.
Oh, look at Tyler trying to swag it up. Yeah. You're not fooling anyone. We all know your favorite movie is Vampires Suck.
It's Lesbian Vampire Hunters. That's my real number 1.
I thought your favorite Dracula thing was that Netflix show where they bring Dracula to modern times and then they give him modern technology and he works with the police. Isn't that your favorite thing?
Is that?
You told me.
I haven't even heard of that trash. What is that?
It's a TV show where they adapt Bram Stoker's Dracula in the first 2 episodes, and then he goes to modern times and he works with detectives and stuff, and I don't remember anything of it, but it was so bad. Anyway, sorry, let the right one in.
We have a masterpiece, a little horror masterpiece here, and I'm talking about the Swedish version.
They made a remake.
Yes, the American remake's called Let Me In, I think, and it has Chloe Grace Moretz in it.
Matt Reeves directed it.
Did he? Okay.
Yeah.
Weird. And
Weird choice.
yeah, and I haven't seen it. I can't imagine it's very good. I can't imagine it touches the original at all. But this kind of is similar to, I think, what we've said about a few of our other vampire film picks. On the surface, it's a coming of age story, and that is the main crux. Then we weave in these weirder supernatural elements, and as we learn about where the story's going, then those supernatural elements become more central to the plot. But for the most part, we are just following a bullied 12-year-old boy called Oscar, and he's living in the suburbs of Stockholm in the early 1980s. And I think it's an adaptation of a book, and it has that kind of classic feel. I can't remember what they're called, like Scandi Noir. It has also that kind of vibe to it, like this very isolated, cold setting. The cinematography really stresses that too. It's like quite an isolated community they're living in. Yeah, like I said, we get introduced to Oscar, and we see him. He's bullied at school. He lives with his parents are separated, and they live in this tower block. Shortly after his introduction, we see that someone else has moved in opposite him, and it's this girl of a similar age, and she starts hanging around in the park that's like in the courtyard of their apartment block, and he starts hanging out with her and chatting to her, and we soon learn that she's actually a vampire, and she's going to help him kind of tackle bullies, whilst he's also going to help her with her situation, because she has like a guardian. And it's like there's so many just weird, interesting aspects of the film, that like she has this guardian who we don't really get any characterization for him. We just know that he's like what do you call him, like
Yarvest's blood for
he's like a familiar. I think he's human, and he is like serving this vampire, and so he's out there hunting people for her, and there's sort of a murder mystery element in the town because people have started finding these dead bodies, because he's not great necessarily at doing this, and he gets discovered stringing many people up. I think he gets caught twice trying to kill someone. Yeah, it just leads to his demise, which then leaves her guardianless, and it's on Oscar to these two to kind of look out for each other, and it's there's a little bit of a romantic element going on between them as well.
Yeah, it's like a very tender.
Yeah, have you seen this film?
Yeah, I've seen it a very long time ago, so I should rewatch it. But yeah, I remember loving it, and I think like the moments of, I guess, violence are really, they stick with you a lot.
Oh yeah. The scenes of like brutality it's beautifully shot, and it makes sense because it's the cinematographer is Hoyt van Hoytema, who you have probably heard
he's the
of.
guy.
Yeah, and now he is like probably considered one of the best cinematographers working in Hollywood at the moment, and I'm not sure whether this is one of his first projects, but this is one of his earlier stuff.
Do you know if this is the movie that kind of like put him on the map for like Hollywood?
I believe
Hollywood
so,
stuff?
because he had a few other things before. I think he had done 3 features before this, and if you rewatch Let the Right One In, it totally makes sense. The cinematography is unreal. Whenever we mentioned that we make some stories ourselves, and there's a lot of times when I'm coming up with like mood boards for how I would shoot a scene, and I use the template of so many of the shots from this film because it's the perfect cinematography for like filming somebody who's isolated or like a loner type character. Some of the shots in it are just beautifully at framing that thematic choice. And yeah, it was after Let the Right One In, he then ended up going on to do The Fighter and Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy and Her and Interstellar and Dunkirk and Tenet.
Amazing looking films. All of them.
Nope and Oppenheimer, yes. And now he's doing The Odyssey with Christopher Nolan too. So clearly the talent was there, and he got to show it all.
People noticed it.
Yeah, he got to show it all and Let the Right One In, and fair play, because it's beautifully shot. It's one of my favourite films in terms of cinematography. Yeah, great directing, all very good realistic performances. Not sure how the kid is who plays Oscar, but amazing performance from a child actor as well. He is such a unique and interesting choices that he makes in certain scenes, and we also get one of the best for it's very like small art house seeming film for most of the time, but then you get these kind of big action scenes in it occasionally. Like I don't know whether you remember the swimming pool scene.
Oh yeah, sure. at the end.
So good at the end. And, Oscar's being bullied, and it's the sort of climax of his bullying. And he's being dunked in the school swimming pool under the water. And as he's, the camera goes under the water with Oscar, and we're focused on his face. And we know that the vampire is coming to help him out. We start seeing body parts and limbs dropping into the swimming pool as we're staying on Oscar's face. And then suddenly the hand that's holding his hair is removed, and it's just a severed hand holding his head. And he goes up, and everybody outside has now been killed by her. It's so amazing the way they frame it. Yeah, just brilliant stuff.
Yeah, it's good. I'm sorry, I got distracted because I was looking at the Wikipedia page for the American remake of the film.
Yeah.
And I was looking at the poster, and the tagline on the poster is "Innocence dies, Abby doesn't." Which I'm guessing Abby is the name of Eli.
Yeah.
Like, in this rendition of the story. And that's such a horrible tagline for such a, I don't know, it doesn't match the film at all. Like, it's such a weird choice.
No, and it feels I remember the trailer for Let Me In. It feels like a very Hollywood take on the story, and that sums it up.
I like Matt Reeves. The movie cannot be horrible if Matt Reeves directed it, but definitely not one movie that needs an American remake. For sure, so.
No, it's a perfect film in my opinion, and it works with the setting.
I mean, even Stockholm as a setting, as probably you were saying, like it's so much better. Like, I'm reading now, Los Alamos. they moved the story from Stockholm to Los Alamos. I'm not sure that hits the same vibe.
Yeah, just great stuff.
All right, I will rewatch it because I haven't seen it in a very long time, but I do remember it being a good movie. So
yeah, and has these little goes in these offshoots of weird directions, and it has, in a similar way to, like we said with What We Do in the Shadows, it kind of has these typical elements of the vampire genre, which are maybe seen as like sexy and opulent or whatever, and again it brings it to a gritty, realistic position, where it's like, actually, this would be a horrific way to live. And they have a really cool sequence when it's the one character gets infected, and she slowly starts to turn, and she's starting to realize she's getting affected by the sunlight. And it's just a fantastic scene when she desperately wants to die.
Yeah.
Makes her husband sort of reveal the... I won't spoil that anyway, but yeah, great stuff.
Well, you've spoiled so much already. You spoiled the ending when she kills the bullies, so...
That's true.
It's fine.
Yeah, 10 out of 10. Great film.
All right. That's a rare 10 out of 10 from Tyler. I think the first on the pod. So, you should really go watch this right now.